Let's see, go, yeah.
Good afternoon. Mr. Rickman,
Here.
Mr. McDowell.
Yes.
Mr. Duval.
Here.
Mr. Bedora.
Here.
Mr. Vine.
Here.
Mr. Davis.
Here.
Mayor Benjamin.
Mayor Benjamin is en route. He was testifying in DC today. And so I spoke to him about 30 minutes ago, so he should be here in a couple hours before we start. He hopes to get here while we're in executive session.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. Are you gonna ask for an
Yes, Reverend McDowell, will you, let's do the invocation, please?
Let us pray. Lord, in all that we say and do, words are not adequate enough to say how grateful and thankful we are. Lord, we simply ask that thou would touch us individually and yet collectively. Allow us to sense and to feel your presence. Lord, in the midst of tragedy this past weekend, we pray for the family. We pray that you might hold them up in your hands of mercy and grace, and yet give to this, our city, a sense of hope. Lord, we ask that those persons who responded so quickly and so efficiently, we thank them for their service. Bless us, and yet bless this city of ours as we struggle through breakthrough for this city and for this family. We ask it in your name. Amen.
Ms. Wilson?
Thank you, Reverend McDowell and
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Devine. Thank you. We're going to focus on budgetary items today. So this work session is really a budget workshop. As you know, there are a multitude of capital needs and capital projects. So do not think that the three items listed here in any way takes away from lots of other needs across our city. But as you know, every budget, we try to accomplish much with little, and I try to bring to you items that I feel like take some priority and have a need to be addressed, albeit a safety reason or tied to some grant funding or et cetera. And so the reason why I've got Mr. Tinsley and Chief Jenkins and Assistant Chief Folsom and Mr. Davis here is to bring some of those items to your attention that I would like to hopefully find a way to include in our budget as we are finalizing it. So with that, we have some very brief presentations, just bring you up to speed on a couple of these items. The first being the Emergency Operations Center. And this ties in with some discussions that we're going to continue having, probably in executive session actually today. But the Emergency Operations Center certainly ties to our overall public safety needs and the integration of full-time monitoring efforts, the cameras, et cetera. And Harry will touch on some of that. You should have a one-pager outlining the recommendation. Emergency Operations Center briefing note.
Yeah. Good afternoon. Thank you for your time and the opportunity to provide you a briefing on the status of the Emergency Operations Center. There's a briefing page there for you if you'd like to follow along. As we endeavor to transition the Emergency Operations Center over to from Lady Street to Main Street location, so we will have emergency standby generator power so we can have sustained operations within the Emergency Operations Center. Also, it is necessitated by the lease that will end at the Lady Street property summer of 2020. So the background, we started looking for opportunities to find some funding streams. So we submitted a FEMA hazard mitigation grant and to find funding, federal funding for the standby generator. And the 1800 Main Street location property was selected because it qualifies based on FEMA standards as a critical facility because the Metro police station is there and it is an operating location for our EOC.
What about seismic requirements?
That would not be within the
So, I mean, that, I understand that's one of the issues that a lot of communities are facing is that an emergency command office has to be in a seismic, that has to be part of it.
Correct. That would be a long-term solution down the road as we
I don't
push
think you
forward.
could do that building that way, could you? I mean, I think we need to understand that.
Yeah, the current location where we're at is in the same position.
But it changes now because of the Fed guidelines of the money that we're getting and the new guidelines when you build new or move. And so you're having to, just like code requirements, if you're gonna have to do that. So
Correct.
we need to be conscious of that.
We certainly do, and I guess I'll just go ahead and acknowledge that we feel like the old United Way building, when we acquired it, has served us well and can continue to serve us well for the near future. But when I say near future, that's, I don't know, 5 years or so. And rather than us not utilize the space there and look for new space, recognizing, Mr. Rickman, that an ideal situation is something much more sustainable that addresses seismic and everything else. Really, maybe even the integration of multiple service agencies like PD, fire, and emergency management. But until we get to that point, we know we can't stay at Lady Street for the near future. We're trying to come out of the lease. So we're trying to utilize the available space at 1800 Main, which I will say, and Chief Holbrook or Deputy Chief Kelly will be here probably later, that the presence of Metro in this corridor has been a good thing as far as dealing with some of the other safety issues and related issues you all know about. So I think that presence has been good, and we just make this recommendation to complement that for the near future, knowing that there's probably a bigger solution.
So make sure we don't end up with a clawback because we didn't follow some guidelines.
Yes, sir.
It's come up, I think, with some other communities, and that's why I'm bringing it
No,
up.
it's rightfully so, and you know, with the generator too, Harry, touch upon those guidelines as far as us having to we've gotten a grant, and he's gonna talk about, we've gotta get that in place sooner than later.
Correct. So in February, we received an award for the federal grant for the standby generator for the location, the Emergency Operations Center and the Metro Police Substation. That is a federal share. Well, the total grant is $461,000 and some change. The federal share is $346 with a local match of $115. We currently, the standby generator is part of one phase of the project for 1800 Main, and the other part would be the first floor would require renovation and an upfit to house the Office of Emergency Management, the EOC space, and Safety and Risk Management. So we'll have those co-located in with the Metro and contracts or procurement contracts. So having those essential functions in one location under one roof with the ability to sustain emergency operations during and after a disaster, that's a cost-effective solution to move us forward. As we know, during the 2015 flood, having emergency purchasing, police, fire, those kind of functions under one roof as a central clearinghouse to make those executive decisions paramount to any successful response. And I think from my perspective, our vision is to be ready, responsive, and resilient in what we do from the standpoint of emergency management. So with that being said, there are, the current situation is there are 3 phases to the project. As we said in your briefing page, the generator is a local match of 115. We currently have in general capital funds $250,000 to cover that 115 local share. So that project is fully funded, and we are in the process through support services to move forward on having that installed, that phase. So phase 1, the standby generator is fully funded, and we're whole on that. That leaves in the general capital fund balance of $134,000 and some change. The estimated renovation for phase 2, which would be the renovation and the upfit of the first floor space, is around $750,000. So if we take the remaining balance of $134,000, that leaves us with a current need of $615,391. That's a of course, an estimate. The one thing that does not include is construction contingency. We're trying to harden those estimates up now. As we think those are pretty tight, but that's where we are. So that project, that phase of the project requires additional funding, as I said, of $615,391. The third phase would be once we get the generator installed, we get the upfit done, and we're ready to move in. It would require some EOC technology upgrades and some furnishings. And that includes a digital media suite, which is in the plan to make sure that we have the capacity to develop a common operating picture in the EOC. Currently, right now, where we're at in the space, we are really in the blind, and it's difficult to get situational information on what's really happening during an emergency. So having the canvas to be able to pull in camera feeds as a security platform and our common operating picture platform that we're currently using, which is tracking our officers, working with Richland County and Columbia 911 to pull in CAD data, which is computer-aided dispatch information on where the calls are populating. And the AVL, which is where our asset, our vehicle locators, where we see our assets are. We also have the ability to track our assets, our police officers in the field, and that's a big push to increase their public safety. Where they are, something happens, we know they need help, how to get assistance to them. And that's just one part of it. And then the other part is the traffic cameras and security cameras that we have, and we all know the importance of having security cameras and the benefit that they play in providing or enhancing public safety. So that part would require the additional $180,000. We currently have those operating funds in our budget. We budgeted for those. So that project phase is fully funded as well. So the recommendation would be to provide one-time funding for capital to increase the general capital current fund that we have by $615 to make all three phases whole. And any questions you may have, that's really the short down the brief.
So Harry, you kind of answered my question with some of the discussion about the CAD and all that, but you know, over the last few years, we've realized we've used EOC a lot more, and I guess thinking forward, not just weather disasters, but you know, God forbid we have active shooter, you know, any of that stuff. So are you comfortable with, although this is more short term until we can get the Cadillac that we want, are you comfortable with what is being requested gets us what we need for the use that we're getting out of EOC?
I appreciate you saying that because I think one of the strategies is, you know, the EOC or emergency management is not just, you know, a storm event kind of thing. Our strategy is to integrate emergency management into day-to-day operations. And when we're setting up these platforms and these locations where we're meeting, there's a lot of things that we're doing. One of the reasons we want safety and risk management in that same building is Demetrius, Director Rump, and I are doing the active intruder training to all city employees. And today, I think we've done 20 department and divisions so far, and that's an ongoing process. So using that location, you know, to get that training out and have the ability to have those training events there, also on location where these departments are. We are currently partnering with all the department heads to make sure that we have emergency action plans for each building that our employees are working in, so they know what to do if we have an active intruder situation or some type of emergency. Those plans would roll up into the emergency management, into the EOC. And we also feel like, you know, we have platforms that are available to us right now, and what we want to do is we want to use them on a daily basis. Part of that is the Genetech camera system. You know, we're logged into that in our office every day that we're there. When we go to 1800 Main, we're going to have that up on the video wall with some other camera systems that we hope we can bring in as we go out and grow the system. So I think it is a good stopgap for us to be able to manage that. And if something happens, then we're going to be right there. We can rewind, provide information. We can liaise with PD. We currently continue to do that on a daily basis with them as we speak now. So yeah, I think that's a great point.
So for an example, like the NCAA tournament, to use something that was a positive thing, the ability from this location to have been actively monitoring that, liaisoning with PD and fire, I guess to further answer Ms. Devine's question, you would have the capability to do that from this location for the short term.
Correct.
Or if it, unfortunately, the tragedy incident that occurred, which didn't, it wouldn't have changed anything, but had there been the need for real-time monitoring and someone in that, with that video feed, we would now have the opportunity to have someone watching it all the time. So if they picked up on something that looked suspicious,
Correct.
that would be occurring in this new facility.
That is absolutely the route that we want to take. Yes, sir.
I want to piggyback on this point. Recent incident. The expediency was also the result of cameras. And this is going to be a central location. Where are we, or are we planning the installation of cameras other parts of the city where we know that there is a lack of them? And given active shooters or whatever else in terms of emergency, are we looking to make sure that camera installations elsewhere is included in the plan?
To answer that in the short term, yes, sir. We are actually meeting, I think tomorrow with CPD to talk about the camera systems going forward. We are now currently trying to leverage as much as we can to get those camera systems or those camera feeds into our common operating picture platform. But the key is, you're looking at a small screen or a computer monitor, or just a 60-inch TV panel. We want to have the ability to break that out where you could really see. So this would give us that opportunity moving forward. And yes, we are looking to hopefully, as we, if we can get fiber to certain locations, and that makes it a little easier to bring camera systems back in. We can do wireless stuff through mesh camera systems. So we're looking at those opportunities currently, yes, sir. But we are also during the recent event in St. Pat's, we actually put some short-term cameras up to do some testing to see where we had PTZ cameras set up in 2 locations, 8 cameras, and pulled those back in so CPD could have that in their command post. They're actually looking at those. And then we are too in the EOC. So the key is to have eyes on the ground, but also have someone watching the bigger picture constantly. And I think that's a plus for having that type of situation. And given, that PD is right on the 3rd floor, I mean, downstairs, everything they need is going to be right there.
Identifiable areas. You talked about, we've done it, I think I heard you just say that there are cameras there, and they were placed, not temporarily, but sort of like a junction in place, just to kind of view what's out there.
For the events.
That's
Those
correct.
Yes, sir.
Are there identifiable areas you guys perhaps will talk about where something permanent could take place?
We are actually in discussion right now, as I said, with PD on their assessments on where they think they need to be from a public safety standpoint. But we also look at those areas that we have, the 2 static footprints that we have, which is famously hot downtown and St. Pat's, that we want to make sure that we have specific city camera systems that we can access and have PTZ and be able to pull that data. So, something were to happen, then we have an officer right there. We're rewinding it, giving it right to the investigative team, and they're going doing their thing.
So our camera contract for services that we are currently under expires in October. And so the whole system, as far as any of these additions or expansions or different technologies, all of that will come into play with the solicitation that goes out then, which we're preparing it now. Yes.
Harry, 2
Yes, sir.
questions. One is 1,800 on a fiber backbone that will support this type of technology. Number 2 is 1,800 hardened enough to be safe for our crews to stay in during a storm situation.
We, right now, the building is secure. There's an armed guard there now. There's also PD there. So from a security standpoint, if we need to harden that a little more, we'll increase that posture. So to answer that, yes. As far as the fiber, there's fiber here that we're going to send over here across the street. That will be each floor. That will probably net us about a $15,000 a year savings because it'll be direct to our core. So we'll have fiber direct all 3 floors at 1,800.
I hope it'll be a faster speed than they allow the council to use over
We'll have to talk to the CIO on that.
Ms. Wilson.
Yes.
Ms. Wilson, this discussion is,
Well,
this
when you
come,
type
upcoming,
with your henpeck, Howard, it doesn't move
is
very
this
fast.
upcoming budget? So we're, I would say, well, we want to
Lucky you
find
did it.
615,000.
Thank you
Yeah,
for your,
any other questions for Harry?
thank you for your time, and
right,
the questions were awesome. Thanks.
Thank you,
I think
Harry.
all of us, Aaron, let me just say one other word, because it's sort of heavy on all of us. The expediency and all of that which you are going to be discussing, I think is critical. Just based upon what took place and the availability of those cameras in that particular location, I think it's critical that we tackle this with some expediency and with a real true intent. And I understand, Ms. Wilson, yeah, it's gonna expire, which gives us an opportunity to sort of look at the total picture. And I would hope that we look at the total picture. So occurrences that took place this past weekend become a real lifesaver for some folks. So if we could do it with some critical intent.
Those were all stationary cameras,
That's
not mobile.
That's right.
Exactly. So imagine if we have that pan, tilt, zoom, and active monitoring. It's a game changer.
Well, and I could just say another thing, just so publicly, we say this before, but most people don't even see Harry until we're having an emergency. But your role is so critical, and the professional way you do it is just extraordinary. So we thank you, and we really, really appreciate all the work and the forward thinking that you do.
Good job, Harry. Okay, so some more professionalism being displayed, I know, with our other presenters.
Don't leave,
Mr. January 2018.
February.
Oh, February, excuse us.
I did had a March, a month in April one year, as you recall.
Okay, now let's not go too far. Fire facilities.
Okay,
Chief
Feeling a little
Jenkins.
nauseous now.
Exactly.
Okay, let me put on my game face.
There you go.
Mayor, Pro Tem, Divine, council members, city manager, Wilson. Thank you all for allowing us to come here, do this presentation. Basically, we're gonna be talking about something that's much needed, and, I think that once you see the presentation, that you all will agree. I'm quite sure that you have been hearing about this station, for quite some time. But the one thing that I would say,
We got Howard here.
the one,
She's giving her inputs.
the one thing that I would say, while we're standing up here talking about Station 2, I just want y'all to keep in mind that there are other facilities that has need as well. This is just one of the immediate needs that we have right now. So I'm gonna digress, so my riding star can increase. Chief Folsom, and he gonna make the presentation.
Chief, just before Chief comes up, I know that there are other stations, say, in the city that needs this kind of, what we're gonna talk about in November.
Yes, sir.
Station 11,
Station 11, which is off of Bloom Court, off of Two Nuts Road. It is basically in the same shape as Station 2, so we definitely need to be taking a look at that as well.
okay, that won't be a part of this conversation.
It won't be a part of this
But it's
conversation,
something we need to address quickly.
but I do, that's why I want to kind of put that in your mind, that we definitely need to be taking a look at that as well.
And I think Chief Folsom will, towards the end, talk about he'll give you next steps. One of those next steps is overall facilities.
That's correct.
Look with,
Throughout the city.
yes, sir, with 11 and, well,
And the county.
I won't begin to talk about
Yeah.
the different stations, but 11 is definitely on the short list.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Wilson. If you have any questions at the end, certainly
Afternoon. Again, my name is Mickey Folsom. For those that don't know who I am, Mayor Pro Tem, Ms. Devine, Ms. Wilson, City Manager, councilmen, city leaders, and any stakeholders that we have. We're here today to present to you some needs for Station 2, and overall, we'll talk about some other needs as well. The purposes of this today is to talk about the overview, the purpose, the background, and current situation and recommendation. Many of you all know back in 1996. Do I need to?
No, you're fine.
Stay near the mic. You're being broadcast worldwide.
I appreciate that. Back in 1996, the city purchased a floral shop that was built in 1974 and retrofitted for a firehouse in the USC, the Olympia, and the downtown corridor. But at the same time, you will notice we built Station 9 and Station 16 here. With the purchase in 1974, I would like for you to understand that that building was 22 years old when we first purchased it, and we fitted it to be a firehouse that it was not intended to be. It was intended to be a stopgap measure to provide emergency service and to meet ISO requirements at that time. It was not intended for 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year to accommodate firemen or a firehouse. Here, what we have here is Station 2, an overview, and Station 9, an overview. And if you can notice here, it's a one-way in, and so and on the next slide, you'll see more what I'm talking about. Here at Station 9, which is recommended for safety reasons, we should never back a fire truck if we have a chance not to. Here at Station 9, Station 16, and most of our other stations, you'll see a drive-through to go in and drive through without backing up in traffic, which put our guys in harm's way.
The issue backing up in traffic, it's not necessarily backing up, it's because you have to go in the street to get in.
That's partially the issue as well. And then when we have, say we have a single truck, which we don't have in the city, a guy backing the truck by himself in the dark can be a problem as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Here at Station 2, if you see the pad and you see all these tire marks, so when we go here, the guys have to pull all the way in, almost to the fence, back up, then pull back up, and then come back into the station. And along with some of the deterioration of the concrete pad we have here. We can talk about current situations, and like I said before, we're operating in a building that was not intended to be a firehouse. But we will talk about some living accommodations, structural concerns, safety concerns, no room for expansion, and some financial. Improving living accommodations. Here what we have, you can see here, we have a bathroom that's somewhat small. You have the stalls here and the showers right here together. And just like, you can use the bathroom, jokingly, you can almost take a shower at the same time. Yeah, so.
Same time.
And here, what we have here, here is just a limited functionality. When we talk about ADA requirements, although this station does support ADA requirements, you would have to go through the front door to go to the office area, and then you have to come back outside and go through the bay to get to the day room area. So we do meet the requirements. It's just a limited functionality when it comes to that. Sleeping accommodations. Here, what we have with the growing population and with the growing increase that we have with females and male in the fire service, with the building and the way they're building firehouse now, it's to our advantage to start looking at different types and different styles of living accommodations.
How many personnel spend the night at a time at Station House 2?
It's according to the size of the station. Like Station 2, you have 5. You can have up to 5.
So moving down the line, if we look to replace that, what would be the staffing requirement at that point?
Well,
Because obviously part of the reason of rebuilding this is obviously the growing population, which means we're going to be adding an engine or something there. So we looking to build for 5 more, 10 more. I mean, what's the personnel that we're looking at staffing there then?
Well, anytime you build a station, you build it for growth. So in that particular station, the way the population is growing down in the college town down there, and all the building that's coming up, we probably need to be looking down the road, put another truck down there, at least another ladder truck anyway.
Another ladder truck.
Yes, sir. So you'd be talking about
So we keep 2 ladder trucks and what else?
one ladder truck, an engine, and a battalion chief, which would be
Okay.
9 people. But we don't need to stop there.
No, I mean, all of this comes, but just trying so we get our head wrapped around where we're trying to go. To me, I get it. It's just now where do we go and, what does it cost us? And obviously we can't rebuild on this site. It's not big enough. We may not even be able to tear it down, so we'll have to figure out how to dispose of it, but.
In his presentation, he kind of touched on just what you're talking about as far as where to be and all that good stuff.
So Chief, if you would have had a magic wand, you'll build 3 bay or 4 bay fire station.
If I had the magic wand, I would be a 4. But if I just had a half a wand, I'd be a 3.
So,
just do 3.
but with 4 bay, your staffing requirements for that would be at least
Only if you
12?
expand.
Well, I think there's an opportunity too, and I don't want to, morph into his presentation. There's an opportunity to have some partnerships. Sure. When we do these stations as well. I don't know if you recall, we had a meeting one time with some stakeholders, USC, KC, Richland County, City of Columbia, and we talked about those partnerships.
We need to revisit that.
Absolutely, I
So
agree.
that's one of the next steps of his presentation.
But along with what Chief Jenkins said, when we start talking about expansion, we always want to, have room to grow. If we do a 3-bay station, what it would really do is just meet almost an immediate need right now. A 4-bay station would probably be the best, and also it can help us store like some of our reserve apparatus that we leave out in the weather, and those can last us a longer time if we think forward. Structure integrity concerns. Back in July 12, 2018, City Support Services did a great job of getting child engineering to come and give us a survey. Although the evaluation did not find any major issues, but it should be noted that a 1-inch crack all the way down to a hairline fracture runs the entire length of the bay floor. Also, if you notice here, these tiebacks was installed previously in 2014. It does indicate that we didn't have any movement since these were installed, but this goes to show you that this building was not designed to hold a 24,000-pound vehicle, which is the average size of a fire truck or a fire apparatus. And here what we have is safety considerations and where the fire service is heading. If you take an incident, we talk about hot zone, cold zone, and warm zone. And so we want to take the same initiative when we start thinking about building a new fire station. Here what we have is the apparatus bay and some of the equipment rooms, mechanical rooms, and stuff like that, which would be considered the hot zone. You see it's red. Here what we would have is the warm zone. Your PPEs will be stored here. They can decon here. So when I go out into a fire, if you see most guys in a fireman, they come back filthy, dirty, nasty, got polycarbon fuse on them. Sometimes we don't even know what we have on us. And so what this does, when we can come here, we can decon before we go into what we call our clean area or our living quarters. And so just like you don't want to track, poisons and stuff into your home, the idea in the new building code for fire service, in a sense, this is what we're using. And here, quite obviously, this is for the exhaust system.
How big is that footprint, Chief?
I wish I knew.
Chief, how many stations do we have the exhaust system that's installed as we speak?
We do have them at station 16, station 9, and I believe I I think those are the two stations. We have them, but we haven't done our due diligence of having operational.
Bob is here. I wanted to acknowledge that our architect is here, Bob Probst, and he's accompanied Chief Jenkins and Assistant Chief Folsom, representatives from PD. Who else went with you all to the? Did you go, Robert? Yeah, Ashley from my office.
And with our citizen stakeholders.
Oh, Miss Henley. So there was a really good conference for the new stations to talk about opportunities for communities to go in this direction, and they attended. I think Bob got some great information. So as we're moving forward, some of the next steps, they'll talk about why we did that.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. These pictures came from that
Okay.
symposium. Yes, sir.
Just want to make sure I understand. The decomposed composition area,
Here.
yeah.
Yes, sir.
Is that planned for this station? Is this what we have in each one of our stations?
Not so.
We don't.
No, not yet.
That's the wish list.
Yeah. Well,
This is the direction we should
moving forward, most new stations will start to incorporate this design. Just because of the change in the stuff that we know now. We didn't know some things that in the past. Now we can upgrade, move forward, and then start, looking at this type of design. As we talked about before, no room for expansion. So if you look here in the low height clearance, this is very, very tight. This engine is right at 8.3 inches. 8.3 feet wide, and this door itself is only 12 foot wide, which only leaves you 1 foot on each side to back into. And so we already talked about how tight it is to even back up into a situation like this. Now imagine trying to put a almost 9 feet apparatus into a 10-foot opening. The new station now is common, and average size is 16 feet for the door. So here what you have is the living quarters for the battalion chief. This room is a 7 by 12, and this office area right beside it is a 6 by 12. So just imagine you have your office and your living quarters in a bathroom. So pretty much it's just the size of what they have. Here is just an unprotected pillar that's load bearing. Some of our financial concerns. I talked to Kelvin, and I didn't do my due diligence to get the recommendations or the funding that we spent on Station 2 in the last several years or the last couple of months. But I will let you know that we are continuously spending money on cabinet upfits, what they did a really good job on. They replaced the floors, they did some painting. So our support services are doing a great job, but it just takes time and time and time away from them to keep added to this building that's not designed for a firehouse. Increased population density. I think this is a good news for the city as a whole because we're getting tax dollars. But what the main reason for this up here is I want y'all to see the different type of apartments that we have, multifamily dwellings we have here. Right here, what you have is, I think it's 10 apartments, and all of these apartments added 4,300 beds. 4,300 beds. And that's just this. That's not counting the new homes. That's not counting the hub, none of those different locations. So we are increasing our population.
Well, we're shifting it to areas, a lot of it's being shifted from other areas. So we're pulling people from Shandon, pushing them there because a lot of the student housing, which is causing the concentration that you're talking about, which puts the pressure on 2 versus one of the other houses.
That is a great point. Because if now what you're going to see this is a heat map that we use. This area right here that you see in green, this is, per ISO, this is our 1.5 mile radius that Engine 2 responds in. And so what you're looking at here is for the downtown area, this is the main call, some of the main call areas for that area. So we have a lot of calls in this area. And when you see these yellow dots, what these are, and we can't get rid of them, but this is the railroad tracks and potentially, blocking hazards that we may find when we're responding to calls. Right here is engine 2. Right here is station 9 and station 1. Here in black, what we have is all our residents that's in these locations, residents and also apartments. And in red, what we have is commercial property.
Who covers on all the way out to the interstate? I-77.
Well, back this way, what we have is station 3. It's one of our stations is back this way.
It's on the other side of the interstate?
Down by 277, that's what you're asking?
Yeah.
That would be station 3.
On the other side of 77 where the training center is?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
As we talked about earlier, Chief Jenkins came up and talked about having partners. See what we have here. You still in this radius, you still have Station 2's territory. In the light bluish gray, what we have is the city of Columbia. And I know it's hard to see, but right here in the lighter green and this white, you're looking at Richland County. And so it would behoove us to, partner with them, USC, to see what we can come together and work as a team.
Just for information, with that many railroad crossings, how often does delay come into play during a call?
Mr. David, it varies. I mean, I was at Station 2. When I was an engineer, and sometimes we could find a way around, but we always have a avenue. We'll start another engine or another truck to combat those things. But it does happen. But the percentage it happens, I cannot say.
So, moving forward, we get the funding, we make plans. Transition-wise, are we able to stay in here till we can build the new one and then transition over so you're not going to have a gap? Is that would be your plan?
Yes, sir. I believe that will be the plan. Again, our support services do a good job of maintaining what we have.
How much land do we need to build this concept?
We probably need at least two acres. At least.
So 3 and realistically.
3 is what they.
Again, my one.
I mean,
Yes.
I mean, if we're gonna make the move, we need to think ahead. And I know that some cities are doing all kinds of stuff where they got fire station in the bottom and apartments and businesses on top. Trying to take advantage of space, but I think we need to go through it with our eyes open, because I think we're going to see that area continue to grow. It is a growth pattern for us, so we need to plan that way. So, I mean, if it's 3 acres, 3.5, whatever the number is, I think we need to plan accordingly.
Chief, who covers that little area?
I'll just finna point something out to you. I'm glad you said that. You tell me right here?
No, up a little bit, up towards Gervais Street, right there. Who covers that?
That would be engine 2 and 1. Engine 2 would be on the other side of Gervais, and engine 1 first it would be on the other side. But this area right here is I believe this is Casey. Right here where they annexed.
Right.
So as you see, Casey's all the way over here. So they have no coverage at all over here. So if we're gonna do something, and if we're gonna help them with energy, I think they need to come to the table.
Or give us back that.
Give us.
Well, that's above my paycheck.
Chief, let me
That's in my wheelhouse, sir.
Chief, let me ask you a question. We've talked about the structural issues and the issues internally. What are the environmental issues related in terms of mildew, mold, and that sort of thing?
So, and
We know who wouldn't be.
Chief Olson and those are very prepared to talk about the environmental issues, health concerns. I actually asked them to dial some of that back a little bit, but I mean, they can talk in broad terms about nationally what the standards are showing and what we've done a lot as far as the equipment that the firefighters have access to, but again, there's some additional things that are going on now.
I would ask, Mr. McDowell, because that is another long subject that, that we can step in and talk a lot about. So I don't want to bore you with a long drawn explanation on that, but, it does have some impact on it.
Yeah, and that's my issue. We can have internally facilities that accommodate our firemen and firewomen. We can have that, and you can actually have a shower and a bathroom elongated so that there's not close proximity to each. But what are the health issues? What are the health issues? Say, for instance, mold, black mold, that sort of thing. And I know that that is an elongated issue, but it becomes a health issue for each one of our fire personnel.
What I can tell you this, Mr. McDowell, is what we do is when we find them and they report it to us, we do the proper testing. We make sure, and we do air quality testing, and we mitigate whatever that situation is. We do not allow our personnel to live in those areas without doing the proper checks and balances. Meaning, we're gonna follow protocol because they're just like our family. A third of our lives are with them, and we want to make sure that we're taking care of them and make sure they are comfortable when they come to work. Because if they're not comfortable, then we're not, the citizens are not going to be served correctly. So we do take that very, very seriously, and we are working through those issues. Again, it's the support services. They do a great job. Anytime we call them or they indicate any foreign substance that may be mold, we will address that situation immediately.
Well, that's my issue.
No,
That's my issue.
and we are.
And I know that there is room for more discussion about that. But when you've got a facility perhaps that's constantly being treated for mold, that means that mold is present and that's not being killed substantially. So my issue is just what you said, Chief, to make sure and ensure that our fire persons are adequately health-wise taken care of. And if mold is persistent at one place and we're having to do it over and over again, then something is deeply rooted in the building itself.
Yes, sir.
So that's another conversation. But I think it's very important, of course, that we maintain the health and the vibrancy of those employees.
It's a great question, and I totally agree, sir.
All right. But there is room later on for continued conversation.
Oh, yes, sir.
All right.
And and that's why site selection is gonna be so important.
Okay.
It's gonna be so important. And also the way we construct these stations is gonna be important too. So we can alleviate all that, those type of, yes. So that's what's gonna be important. I don't think in times past, we probably didn't, select our sites pretty good, but that's why I think going forward, we really gotta make sure we're doing a good site selection.
I think the design would probably eliminate some of that problem. Chief, since we're, that you got the map on your slide on Station 2, obviously there's not enough footprint to rebuild that same location. So within the vicinity, without being so specific, do you want to be on this side of the track, on the other side of the track, left, north, or south, or what? I mean,
Still gotta cross it one
when
way
it
or
comes to
another.
designing, when it comes to designing a station, Chief, what do you look for? I understand the density is part of it, the demand is another, but typically, what would you look for?
I think one thing in that area down there, I don't think it matters. Well, there's certain places where we just do not want to build. But for the most part, trains run all kind of ways down there. So it just all depends on the time of day. So ideally, we want to be down there on Assembly Street.
But you have on here, the assessment will include 3 site location options. So y'all identified 3 possible sites that you want to
Well,
look at?
if we move forward, what we want to do is be able to identify, those sites, at least 3 when we start this assessment.
And they have, but they.
Right, you can't say it, but I'm
Yeah,
just.
but they also want to use an outside person to kind of validate and help, maybe suggest some other options, but they do have at least 3 in mind.
So the assessment, do we have an idea of what the assessment's gonna cost?
Well, we have a very preliminary from some of their meetings that they had that we mentioned earlier when they went to the symposium, and they've met some individuals who are willing to do just a preliminary assessment. We're working with procurement to make sure that, we can move forward with that because it's at a very low cost, but that would not be the architect of record who would do the complete design and construction drawings and all that. So we're gonna move forward, hopefully in this budget, with an initial assessment, as long as procurement is okay with us doing that. And then we'll immediately want to move forward with the solicitation for the design, whether it's design build or just a design, and then who would construct in next year's budget. We feel like once we have that assessment, feasibility study, that would be the point. I think we're gonna have to own that. We would take that and then talk to the partners and see if they would be willing to participate with the final construction.
Can we maybe talk here as we get ready for this assessment, maybe with the chief and yourself and others, and there could be something that we could do very unique that would solve several problems, both for the fire department and the city in a project, and I think we ought to look at maybe that both ways.
I just had some questions from, I know Mr. Duvall and all of you really about, what was the plan, and I wanted y'all to know this has stayed on the radar for some time. So we finally decided we needed to move forward at least with an assessment and feasibility to have something ready to design and build. But yes, sir, we can do that before the assessment.
I think it'd be good just to talk about it, just so we could maybe think about looking at options that may be creative and give something really
Who all
unique.
would like to be a part of that discussion?
Yeah, I
Then
think,
tear it down.
committee of the whole, maybe one afternoon, can talk,
We're supposed to take a trip to Charlotte.
So Daniel, you
But I
looking at
also want us
options
to look at the
other
public-private
than tearing down?
possibility.
No, I mean, in a new building, I think there's been some really unique things that achieve everything that they need in a building with expansion, but also could possibly fill some needs we have as a community. And I think if we're going to go down that path, especially in this area where all this growth is and stuff, it may be something that could be a win-win all the way around. May not, I
So
don't
the
know.
option could very well be not tearing.
Oh, you got, this building you gotta sell. There's
Yeah.
nothing you can do with it.
Yeah.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
think
And I
part
think
of
with-
the assessment was some stakeholder conversations, which would definitely include you all. So, I mean, if y'all are fine with us moving forward with
I
the
think you've got-
assessment, that can all be incorporated.
I think you gotta get the parameters out there and see what your options, because there's no reason to do a conceptual drawing until you know what the site's like.
Yeah,
What-
okay.
what-
And Mr.
What
Rick,
real needs we want to meet, really.
Yeah.
Mr. Rickman, I have seen some designs where stakeholders came together and you actually had residential on top of a fire station, or you had other businesses around the fire station, that the fire station was built
How
in.
does that
Built
work when
into
you
those.
have a family?
So there are some opportunities out there.
Affordable work
cities, they
housing, workforce housing,
But
so
still,
become a big
I hear
thing.
the fire trucks already in the middle of the night.
So, but, hey, but you haven't moved, have you? Point exactly. Hey, my office is next door to Divine Street Station. I hear it all day, every day, but
Wow.
after a while,
Get used to it.
We can put them in the quiet zone.
It was funny 'cause that
yeah, I
night,
think that wouldn't work.
that night
Let's
last
play
week
some
when there was the
tracks there.
accident on the Broadway
Play
Road.
some
I
tracks.
told Jamie, I
Put 'em
said
in the
something's
quiet
going
zone.
on. I mean, it was more than normal. I knew something was going on. I hear them all.
You know, we talked
Chief,
about
did you say that 96 is when we moved in?
Into that structure?
Two.
Yes, sir.
96?
It was used in
74.
96.
It was 74 was when it was built.
They don't
So it was
want
22 years old when we. So, Mr. Rickman, back to your point, if we go ahead with this assessment, we go ahead with an assessment for that area, and on any kind of property, and we can list the property, 3-site location. If you have some other ideas, but what we will get is a construction cost, also station size and standards, but the conceptual site design. You got a question? If we don't have say we don't get the 2 acres that we want, and it's a smaller acre, so he can do a conceptual design showing that we may have to build up. So reality is, it doesn't have to be whatever place that we find, we can move that drawing or ideas somewhere else.
You got parameters you gotta give them. What I think my point is I don't think we need to have a full layout, because you may make a bunch of adjustments based on finding a site that, hey, it may be smaller, we may do this going up because we think this is a better location for us to provide long-term service.
Yes, sir.
That was my only point.
Yeah, North Main, Cottontown is up, and their area is smaller. But I think as some possibilities or just thinking, we could probably do that in a busy area, or maybe start to think of a central location that's multi-purpose, especially if we're going to work with some of our other partners. But I agree, we probably need to help y'all think through this before we break ground on something and outgrow the needs in one day. It could be centrally located but multi-purpose with other partners.
Magic
That
wand.
kind of thing.
Assessment. What the assessment would give us is the correct construction costs, size and standards, and conceptual site options. And this will only be the first phase of the project for Station 2. And here again, we're talking about Station 2 to a certain degree here, but then after we do initial assessment for Station 2, then we want to, as a department, do a assessment of all of our needs, and where we can move forward from there. So this would be an initial step, and then we'll do a bigger grand study and assessment of everything that we have and where we want to go. Growth of Olympia and USC and downtown corridor. And a lot of things we already hit on today when we talked about getting land. This is great for us. This is tax dollars. When we see stuff building up, we're growing. And so what this means is, we're going to start having competition for land. The longer we wait, the more competition we're going to have, to buy or purchase land. So great. I'm glad we're growing, but we need to grow with it as well. That concludes this presentation. Y'all have any questions? We'd be glad to answer.
I think you answered a lot.
Ms. Wilson, may I ask you? The assessment, of course, will be a holistic assessment of all stations.
No, one at a time.
Yeah, I know one at a time, but
But ultimately, yes, sir,
This
needs.
the master plan, of course, is to look at all of them.
correct. We want to do first. This is the first step. Station 2, in a somewhat sense, will give us a general idea of cost, what it's going to cost, conceptual designs, and then we can move forward. And we are going to move forward on not like we're going to do it ourselves, but we want to do a total assessment of where we are within the city of Columbia and how we're going to grow and what changes we want to make.
Will that be in priority form?
I would hope so.
So, but no, what we're really talking about is the total fire service.
That's correct.
Which I think is, we have some new members at county council who are engaged, and I think we need to make sure that they're brought in at the ground level of this so that we don't run into the issues that we have in the past where we have this gap in funding. because I think they fully understand what needs to be done, and I think as we keep them in the loop, I think it's gonna be very important to get the new members involved, because they're very interested in making sure that the service is levelized all the way across.
Chief presented to them, well, you will present to them tonight. Is it tonight or was it their last council?
Tonight,
Tonight.
I'll be talking about
Obviously, I wish
area.
I could be there, but, you know, we meet at the same time, but you're absolutely right. You have to keep them engaged.
And, Mr. McDowell, in your question, when we do our assessment of the city stations, it's not only going to include what we currently have, but it's going to talk about what we need going forward as well. So we already got a placement for a station that we need inside city limits. And we already got those identified. So that would be a part of that study as well.
But your assessment will be capital projects, one part of it, the other part of it had to improve some stations or maintain.
Absolutely,
You know, not
absolutely.
maintain, but improve other stations and how to make them.
We need
There
to
are female quarters that you need to add to them, handicap accessible, you know, other issues that we might have in some of them.
we need to consider rehabbing all of our stations.
Magic wand, chief.
Well, you know, after
That's a part of the
after his presentation, I'm willing to give him $10 million.
You would or you wouldn't?
I'm willing.
Oh, done.
Great job, Assistant Chief.
I'm glad you gave up your pension. That was nice of you.
Thank you.
All right, very good. Our next capital project presentation is Mr. Randy Davis with Parks and Recreation, our director.
$10 million.
That's pocket change for you, Randy.
It is.
Excuse me.
All right, Mr. Davis, thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, Council, City Manager. I'm presenting to you today some priority projects that is high on our list of needed improvements as we go forward. Southeast Park is a high priority on our list, in which we've have allocated $492,000, thus for needing an additional $500,000. It was originally the Environmental Education Center was part of the original plan for Southeast Park. The Environmental Center will include restrooms, meeting space, as well as storage for outdoor recreation equipment for outdoor recreation programming. It will also include a tennis pro shop that you don't see in that document that you have, and an outdoor amenity deck and storage, again, for outdoor recreation equipment. So we are at that threshold of working with the developer for that Educational Environment Center. And in order to move forward, we needed additional funding. Hyatt Park is work that is underway currently with the approved funding of $625,000, which includes.
Can you go back to Southeast? I'm sorry, I had walked out. Do we have any numbers on the park's usage? And how many people are actually using the park and what they're using it for? Do we have any background information?
I don't have any on me at the present time, but I know it's heavily used by tennis players, and many people, walk the park in the.
And the reason I ask is, you planned this, we planned an education center and facilities, which was planned almost 20 years ago. I mean, it was probably.
So you're right, and I think USC was part of this conversation when we planned that center and that idea into how
We could just
they
got
can be
elected
part of
as
it.
council.
Yeah,
And
no.
we just need to get back.
Yeah, I don't know if
The
USC was
discussion.
part of it.
I don't
It was
remember
Jim
that.
Papadilla.
Yeah.
It Ms. Papadia's idea.
Yeah, we talked to USC back in 2012, I think, when, or
he's
maybe a little later.
Well, he's talking
My
20 years
20 years
ago when it
ago.
was conceived.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I ask is it the same needs? I mean, we're constantly building more buildings that create maintenance
I often
issues and other
hear-
things.
I often hear from the tennis players about the restroom and
Well, the
some of that.
restroom has always been
Yeah.
an issue, and I think we gotta address
And I
it.
hear from folks who go and they happen upon it or they go out there for an event. They're like, they really like it.
Yeah.
The restrooms are the issue that I hear a lot. And I keep hearing from folks that if it were fully built out, probably more people would go because it would be more of an amenity.
And we can have more structured programming going on out there.
I think we
But,
lost a couple
I
of
think
tennis
Daniel-
tournaments because
I think
of,
Daniel's right. When Jim first, this was an idea that kind of Jim had years ago, and his thought was the educational center would go for like scouting.
They were like kayaking and all that kind of stuff
That was kind of the
on that
thought.
pond.
and just to add, I think, Randy and the park, they've done a really good job maintaining, especially the pond, and everything else that's going around it. And the neighborhood does use it. I mean, there's a growing neighborhood and, across the street, there's another neighborhood developing. So I think there's the need there. We just need to find the little funds to finish up, what we need to get done there. And I think more and more people, and hopefully if we get one tennis tournament to host there, I think the rest of it will just take care of itself.
Any other questions on Southeast Park?
Well, I guess, to me, it brings up the question is, do we need to look at really reevaluating before we pledge more money to it? Is this a massive need? And the usage gonna justify all the maintenance and everything else when we've got other issues? And, I'm gonna bring it up right now because I have been inundated with phone calls, but if we don't do something about the soccer fields, we got kids falling in holes. It's a mess, and all these other communities are putting up some this is out at Owens Field.
It is a terrible problem right now.
I mean, I just think we gotta fix some of the things we already got on the table. Just,
About the soccer field?
Yes, we've
we don't have
a
any
number of
irrigation
conditions
out
about the
there or
conditions
anything.
of the field
They do.
itself.
I'm not sure there's a way, going back to your
Yeah,
question
that's-
on Southeast, though, I'm not sure there's a real way to assess usage. We don't
I
really
mean, I think
have-
we just, I mean, the bathrooms, I know and all that, do you wanna build another big building unless we have a real program for it that's gonna cost us to maintain and everything?
I just think that, there's a need there because there's nothing else for residents that live on that side of town to visit anything or do any park. I mean, every time I go there, there's people walking the trails, or I know the tennis courts are 16, right? So
Right.
it's the only one that in the city limit that size. I mean, there's good tournaments can come to that park, and if we have the facilities for it, and I don't think that would be a hard sell for a tournament to come and host their event there.
I'm saying just justify it.
Justified?
I just did. I think there is a need, yes.
Well, I mean, again, that's why I bring these discussions to
Right.
this table, because I think depending on who you talk to, it gets justified. So what we tried to do, and now I'm taking that to heart hearing about Owens Field, because I hadn't heard that from the director, but there are any number, we could spend, as you all know, millions of dollars on the park system. I think where we find ourselves oftentimes is in trying to spread the wealth each budget session within all the districts. We try to just bring some balanced suggestions to you. If Owensville, y'all feel takes more precedence than
He
Southeast,
can work it out.
over
With all-
South,
with
more
all
than
with all the
South.
parties involved.
Aren't 3 of these 4 projects in one district?
Well, and if there's any safety needs that
Of
are
course, I mean, the Parks District.
Again, many,
Welcome to Columbia.
revenue
If you wanna go to a
generation,
park, go
safety
to District
needs. I
1.
mean, but I will let him finish. But there's some method behind every one of these. So
So going back to
Yeah.
Southeast and Mr. Rickman's initial question, what's the amount for the bathrooms?
what's the amount?
Yeah, for the
The doll-
bathrooms, to complete and get the bathrooms, the type of bathrooms that we plan.
Well, the restrooms came with the educational,
Okay,
environmental
so
educational center.
they're indoor, so,
One big,
okay.
yeah, one big
Yes.
building they designed.
Support
could you
outdoor
redo that?
recreational programming, I mean,
Well, it makes sense to, I mean, you.
well, what are we gonna do? I mean, and how many people are gonna participate? You gotta have a plan, you can't just go, well, they build it and they'll come.
Daniel, they are people participating in that park.
I'm
Yeah,
not
the
denying that,
educational-
Mo,
no,
that's
but
not
what
my
I'm saying is
point.
the educational part of it, where the canoe and the boats or whatever they were gonna utilize for the pond to, educate some of the marine life. It's not there yet, because there's nothing there for them to do. I mean, it's just a pond around a wooded area.
I
You do
understand
that
that.
with 492,000.
According to the engineer, when they did that a few years back, they wanted 992.
Well, if we use the hospitality bond money and free up that $500,000 for Owensville, wouldn't that be a start?
Howard Owens Field is a totally different discussion. Will be glad to fix 100% of Owens Field, if y'all agree to it. But there's a lot more to the story behind.
Randy says it's 1.8 million to do Owensville.
Well, I think Owens Field, I
They're
mean,
on it.
I think we ought to be looking at having a conversation with somebody like a Modern Turf and having them maintain it and do it like they do these other high schools and other places, so we have a playing field, because we're missing opportunities on that field every day. And you go to Sumter, you go to Augusta, they used hospitality money to fix it, and those clubs are engaged, and they have no more than 4 fields, and those fields are pristine and play on, and people go in there and utilize it. I'm not saying you don't do Southeastern Park. My problem is that I haven't received one phone call since 2004 about Southeastern Park and an uproar for it. So my question is are we putting a bunch of money in a park that's not going to get utilized? And nobody seems to be able to provide any information that says different. It's a simple
we can
question.
Daniel,
give you the data
yeah,
if you want the data
think
on
that's
the
what he
usage.
wants.
I can get you some data from the tennis associations that take part in the number of league matches that take place.
The bathrooms have always been an issue, and maybe a small building, but I'm trying to understand, because when you start talking about, this is all capital. I hadn't seen in the budget how we're gonna afford to pay staff to run all these programs, how many people are gonna utilize it. I mean, I think these are pertinent questions.
I think we already have a park ranger there, don't we?
Yes, we have staff there.
So the staff is already established there, maintaining the building, of
I
course.
think he's talking about the programming. I think that
Right.
does need to be in the conversation, and to see what the long-term maintenance is, and is this still a viable plan? But regardless, if you don't go with the education center, then you need to do something else, whether it's like the bathrooms that we have next to like the pool, or somehow we need to make sure that we're providing the bathrooms. So.
Well, you probably need some kind of meeting where somebody can have a picnic and this and that, but to me, it's an overall thing. What are we putting in for $1 million, and what are we getting
And
out
I know
of
it's
it?
a little dated, but the assessment that we did a few years ago on programming in the parks, does that address, or does that, address some of Daniel's questions regarding programming and the needs and the desires when we did that survey?
From a standpoint of the facilities, it addresses the facility side of the concern.
I thought we did a survey of programming. Remember I thought we did like 2 parts, and there was this thing
The master
that was,
plan part.
yeah, it was about programming, what people would like to see in the parks, what activities would they do.
Yeah,
So I'm just wondering if there's any data in that would be beneficial for Mr. Rickman.
I can look that up from the standpoint of the strategic plan and what types of programs that we offer.
And I'd love to go back to Owens Field and figure out a way to fix the tennis court, I mean, not the tennis courts, but the soccer field. I mean, that's a discussion we've had, and, you know, I think we've done some maintenance with the sprinkler system, and we fixed some of the turf, and we've improved some of that part of it. You know, I understand the county and the school district and us all embundled in this, and the YMCA, of course, so I think we need to bring all those to the table and bring a resolution for all of it. I'm 100% agreeing with that, yeah.
And that, you know, in terms of what you see before here, there's a reason for, you know, the southeast and the various other parks that you see listed. Is, you know, some are safety related, some are projects that have already begun, and in order to finish the project, in order to cross the finish line, we need additional funding. So it was already approved for the 492 to move forward with the project of Southeast Park. However, with the increased cost of materials and supplies, those prices have went up drastically.
Randy, just going back to the Owens Field, can you bring us next time or email us with maybe some estimates or what you would like to do at Owens Field when it comes to the soccer field? I know Todd at one time did a design with overhaul design for the whole thing. And maybe bring back some of that, email it back to us so everybody can be aware of what we discussed. And
yeah, that's fine. And we do have some numbers on the type of turf. Right. What would it cost, depending on the type of turf we choose to use if we were to maintain it. If someone else was to maintain it.
I know a water company where we could get water too to add out there.
for free. Yeah, I know.
No, nothing's free.
We calculate our cost to water it.
Nothing's free, gentlemen.
Okay. Randy, my understanding is these are in addition to what you already budgeted for parks. Am I correct?
Yep.
This is above and beyond what we're working on now.
Correct. If you're talking about Hyatt Park.
No, I'm not in park in particular, but I'm just, that's fine.
There are only two left. Let's see.
Three.
What are you talking about?
I just mentioned that because one question that's out there is what other resources can we tap into? We don't get any money from parks and from PRT. Am I correct?
I mean,
as an example.
As an example, correct.
Can we tap into some of their funding? We qualify.
Right.
That's one question. I don't know what we can get from the feds, but there's also the parks.
He said we could tap into PRT.
Are we? Have we been approaching them?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. And for some of the, I think, smaller items like, say, play equipment. You know, the Parks Commission we have, they're gearing up and wanting to do some things. I think from time to time we could rely on them. They've been helpful in the past. I can attest to that. So I think anything that can help defray the cost on some of this, we ought to really stay vigilant in trying to.
We take every opportunity to pursue additional funding wherever funding is available. You know, you don't always get what you apply for in terms of grants, but whenever we have an opportunity, we do aggressively pursue opportunities for funding for various projects.
Randy, what's the name of that new game that plays on the tennis court for old folks? Beetle ball. What's the name of it?
I'm not sure. Pickleball?
Pickleball.
Pickleball.
Have we got a pickleball?
Well, you obviously haven't been playing. You don't even know the name of it.
I have gotten lots of calls
We
about
got
it.
it in Drew Wellness. There's a center in
Drew
Drew Wellness.
Wellness has a
Drew- yeah,
program.
Drew-
Drew
yeah.
Wellness has
Pickleball.
a pickleball. It's for old guys.
We need to put part of those 17 things in pickleball. It's the fastest growing game in the United States.
Well, it's probably the slowest fasting game in the United States.
You couldn't keep up, Ricky.
Is that a challenge? We gonna have a little pickleball challenge?
I'm not gonna say.
So, you know, if you recall, there's a number of, you know, park improvements that we've, you know, continuously submit each annually. And these are some of the projects that, you know, you funded, but we need additional funding. In terms of your question, Mr. Davis, under the request is what we're asking for in terms of additional funding in order to continue to move these projects forward.
You know, I don't have a problem with us also, you know, really determining usage and demand. I think that's something we should always look at. I can't, you know, evaluate whether one area or another is not used as much as we
Right,
anticipate.
Greenview tennis courts by far is probably one of the most utilized tennis courts we have in the city. And, I mean, I think it's a priority if I had to choose out of these just off the top because it is so widely used by a host of folks. I mean, there isn't a time you can't go out there.
Can't find a parking space.
Yeah.
Well, and we've had some complaints, so, I mean, we've already said that's definitely a priority for next year.
And those are safety issues.
Correct.
I guess my question on, so going back to Hyde Park, I see the work underway, and then the additional work requested, and then the requested amount is over $1 million. That's to do this additional work requested.
Yeah, under additional work
Right.
requested, that will continue to move that project forward near completion, whether we allocate it in phases, you know.
So, and I think that's been the kind of discussion is somehow figuring out phasing, but I don't know, I guess my question would be, because we know that we have so many park needs, and we know that there are, there's not enough money. Every year, do we assess, do we do an assessment and put the request in under a priority?
Yes.
Because, I mean, I know Sam has been out there and talking a lot more, but the folks that I hear from, the fact that we're moving forward with something shows our commitment, and they're, you know, of course, they certainly want it to keep going, but they wanted to know that we were committed. I'm just looking at $1 million when we know that we've got other park needs and requests. I think that the best way for people to understand why you're prioritizing certain projects is to say we're doing this assessment. This is why this is being put in the budget. Well, and I guess my question really is, did you put this in here because there's been a push. I mean, I just don't know if that $1 million is the best use of our money for next year.
Well, I think one thing you need to consider is that if you go to Hyde Park, other than that building, there's nothing there.
Yeah, but
It's on a major corridor, and they've been asking for years. It's not a recent request.
Right, but Sam,
And
all due
we've-
respect,
and
lots
we've
of
been
people
a-
have been
and
asking
we
for
have
years.
been adding, it was not a one lump sum contribution to the park. We've been adding it over some years.
Correct.
And this puts us in the last phase of it.
So let's be realistic about a couple things in here from a discussion standpoint. Earlwood Park Amphitheater is right down the street. Why do we need another amphitheater right there? Why not look at the things that are important? Ball field improvements, you know, splash pad, obviously for the heat, you know, picnic area, you know, the outdoor gym, fixing those things that can be really utilized. But some parks, folks have got to start sharing some assets. We just can't afford to replicate everything everywhere. Does that make sense?
Well, I don't think the amphitheater, as they're calling it, it's not going to be what you have at Earlwood.
I don't know. I mean, I can't tell from this. I'm just,
that's
but you
not-
know, it's asking for a sculpture. To me, a sculpture is not, that's not a priority.
I'm not gonna debate that one way or the other. What I'm telling you is, that's an area that we're trying to, help develop, not just that location, but it's.
I don't
it's
disagree
this-
with
no,
the plan.
this-
I just,
the
I'm
park
trying
and
to
rec-
understand it.
Parks and recreation are an attraction for development. People move into an area because what's available. You have folks who would not, right now, don't even look at that area, look at that park, because it has the appearance of being neglected. It's not being neglected. Parks and Rec is doing what they can to make it look decent, and so that you can come in and feel safe. But if that's all you're doing, then you've got folks that want to invest in that area.
I guess the question comes back to what's the most important, and we get the biggest bang for our buck to make those differences. Because I don't know if we could find another $1.1 million. To be honest with you.
And
Well,
what,
it's
and what
not,
I'm saying is,
it's the remaining dollars are not 1 million.
that's
got
what this
600.
Says the
It
requested
says
1.1 million.
That's the total request, am I correct?
That's the total.
Well, see,
No, the total
Total
request is
request.
1.7 million.
They've
It
already
says
got approved for
625 is
600.
approved. It says the delta is 1.1 million. And I guess none of the points that you made disagree as far as investment in the area. However, when you're looking again as a park system and citywide, if you're doing something, you're doing some things in the park right now, and we all supported that allocation to do that phase one. I'm just questioning whether or not it makes sense to go back immediately and continue this project at 1.1 when you've got, you know, ball field at T.S. Martin, and then you've got the parks that we're trying to do off of Sunset. You've got other areas of the town. I'm just saying that I think that we run a risk of pushing one area over another, and I think that staff needs to have, and I think sometimes they feel pressured. I'll say that. But I think staff needs to have independent way to say, this is why we're recommending this. This is where we can best suit the money. And then, of course, we ultimately make the decision. But just looking at what the additional work is requested, looking at what we're currently doing, and then looking at, you know, what's being requested additionally at this point, knowing that we've got other park needs, I'm just not sure that there's been an argument made that this is the best use of our money at this.
I think we've made the argument for it over the years. We've also made the argument for it, and we've listened to the people who live in that area.
Okay,
And-
so I'm not gonna argue with you.
No, I'm not gonna
about
argue
it.
with you either, but what I'm telling you is they're taxpayers also. That park has just as much of a priority to that area as the others. I don't begrudge any one of these requests because I think it's necessary.
Right.
I think,
But you always
I
want to
think-
argue that your parks get priority over anybody else's parks.
that's
It
never
is.
been an argument for priority.
You
never-
weren't gonna
it
vote,
has
you
never
weren't
been-
gonna vote for
it
Finley
has
Park
never-
because before Hyatt Park. To me, that's not showing, you know, I mean, and again, Ed's not arguing over his parks, and he has needs in his parks. I'm just saying that we all have to work
Ed is
together.
making the same pitch for parks in his area. Am I correct, Ed?
Yes, he is.
Okay.
I understand that, and I expect you to as a district member, but as a member of a uniform body, when we're looking at our budget, I'm just saying that at some point you need to say, okay, I've gotten, Greenview Park is getting this, Hyatt Park has gotten
Because
this,
it needed
or
it.
what, that's
Because it
not the
needed it.
argument, that's correct, because it
Okay.
needed it. So again, look at what the needs are citywide. That's all I'm asking. That's all I'm not saying that there isn't a need there, but what I'm saying is when you're prioritizing dollars, and that's what we're asking. I'm asking, Ms. Wilson, for staff to come back with an independent assessment of what
They've
the
done-
needs are on the part. Let me finish.
Give them credit.
Let me
They've done
finish.
that.
We don't have it in front of us right here. We just had a whole discussion about Southeast. So I'm just saying, I would like to have independent assessment, and I would like to know if $1.1 million is the priority of the park system to finish Hyatt Park next year, and staff believes that, then okay, fine. But if we're looking at our citywide system, we're looking at amenities citywide, then I want to know what else should be considered and what should be on this list.
Well, that's fine. What I'm telling you is, nobody is pressuring staff. And don't imply that staff is buckling under pressure.
So,
I didn't apply it, I said
You
it.
didn't, you implied.
I said it.
Well,
I
then
said
you're
it.
wrong.
I said
Then you're
it.
not accurate.
So it's, we disagree on that.
Well, we'll disagree, but I'm telling you, for years, these areas have been begging and quite frankly, beating some of us up for what they don't have. There has been no push to bump any of these other projects. And I've always been willing to give and agree to every project that has come to this desk, to this table. And on this one, we've met with those folks, staff has met with those folks. Those folks have come up here, not because they're looking for frills, they're looking for some of the basic necessities of health and recreation that improves their area, their quality of life. And everybody deserves that. And this is not an overnight request. I wouldn't be fair to my colleagues if I took that approach.
No one said it was overnight.
Well, you're
I'm just
implying that it
asking-
is. Well,
No, that's not what I said. That's not what I said.
Tamika, no,
That's
you
not-
listen to
well,
what I'm saying.
Well, you're not listening to what I
I'm
said,
listening,
because I
I'm
didn't
hearing
say that.
everything you're saying.
No, what I'm saying
Time
is
out.
that you have to be fair, and I'm asking staff.
I think I'm more than fair.
Fine. I'm asking Ms. Wilson, just staff, to give us an assessment to include the park in Belvedere that we promised 10 years ago. To include T.S. Martin that we promised
Well.
10 years ago. To include
Owens
what we
Field.
want to do, Owens Field. I'm just saying, we have to look at all of our needs citywide. And the arguments that you made for North Main are valid, but we also have to look at the investments we made in the park system. And I'd love, honestly, to look at the investments we made in the park system per district. Want to know what we've invested in the last 10 years per district.
Well, I think you also, and if you want to be fair to everybody around the table, you need to ask, why haven't those investments gone in that area? Not because of one area, not because they've gone in one area, not because one person has asked for them. Okay?
can I add something, Randy, and since we got you on the, I know Owens Field has come up in a discussion, T.M. Martin and a couple of other parks in your district. Can you maybe email us or give us a rough number into, I mean, I calculated like 2.2 million for the wish list that you have in here.
Right.
And I'm guessing there's probably a couple more millions between all the other wish lists that we have, we just talked about. I mean, is 5 million a good number that you think that would take care of the parks? I mean, that, because if there is a possibility, obviously, we've issued a hospitality tax bond for Southeast Park at one time. Whether we have that eligibility or that flexibility to do the same thing for the other parks that we have around the city. You know, legal has to get involved, whether we're capable of doing that or not. But maybe that's something that we should consider and talk about. Because I think this comes up every single year.
And
Every single year.
To your point, Mr. Bedora, during your retreat, we had a very pointed discussion with council about the direction we were going with Finley Park. So overarching, this council decided that from a parks perspective, if we were to issue a hospitality tax bond, that's how we would potentially pay for that, which eliminated the ability
To do it for these.
do anything else right now, because that was a priority item that everyone agreed the sacrifice would be made to try to get that done.
Sure.
Obviously, we are still in a negotiating phase. We're trying to figure that out. There may be opportunity to revisit that. If it is, then maybe that would be where some significant significant amount if we could all come to terms on what it would be spent, how it would be spent, and for which projects. The reason why, to the discussion that's going on, that I asked Randy to bring a few capital needs that in the event we don't have a bond, which is, as of right now, wasn't moving in that direction, but we can revisit that, is if we're able to look at different sources of funding as we're finishing the budget and able to do some portion of any of this. All of this wouldn't probably get done either. But again, to Mr. Vine's point, Hyatt Park, yes, continues to be raised with staff all the time, every year. Southeast Park has as well. So I think part of the
I know Westfield.
part of the, and he didn't put Owensville on this list. It's on another list, and I mean, we have what you're asking for right now. But anyway, there are lots of reasons probably why ultimately he put these projects on here as we continue through. I mean, Keenan House is because for the community, it's not being utilized, and revenues are not being generated until that gets done. And it is a location that people do like to use for events. So that's
Premier
very
It's a
important.
relatively small amount of money, too.
Correct.
I mean, on
Greenview
here,
tennis
And it has-
courts.
Keenan and
are things-
Greenview are the priority, I think, on this list.
Right. But I agree with you. Some of these are items that council members do reiterate continuously with us. So we try to acknowledge it. In my opinion, does it always take priority over something else? Not necessarily, but there are some needs that are there, obviously. The site improvements and the work that I think are listed here for $625,000 were discussed with this council when Mr. Baker was here as being what would get Hyatt done and sustain it for right now. If the council's choice is to do the full gamut, we just keep bringing it forward to you. I mean, does it take precedence over other projects? No, not necessarily. I mean, rather than having to put Randy through that, I just say that. I mean, but we also know that it continues to be discussed in community meetings and raised in a way that keeps coming up. So do you just put that to bed? I mean, that's up to you all.
And I'm not saying none of this stuff should be done, but I think you have to
In the
prioritize.
context of
And,
everything
yeah,
else.
and I mean, things can get done, but they shouldn't get done at the detriment to others. And then what we tend to do is then we'll trade among each other and say,
I know.
okay, we'll support this or whatever. But then something happens. Someone gets hurt at Owens Field, and then everybody's clamoring at staff saying, we should have done this, we should have done that. And so I just think that we need a better process, and we have to acknowledge. I mean, Southeast Park is in Daniel's district, but Daniel sat here and said, what are the priorities? Is this necessary? I think that's the kind of give and take you need.
Southeast in my district.
Oh, well, it
Used to be.
used to be in his district. It used to be in his district. But I'm just saying, you need to have that kind of saying, yes, I want this. And there's nothing wrong with saying and advocating for it and saying, I want this. But you also have to recognize that in the scheme of things, when we vote, we're not voting per district. You're voting for the city and what's best for the city. And you can say, I want this, and I want to keep this on the list, and I want to keep pushing for it. But to bump something else because, it's been promised, you have to understand what that does to the other needs that we have at the city.
And I totally agree with you. I'm not gonna pick on Southeast Park. Southeast Park was designed to have a house and to have the restrooms and all that when we first built the park. And, I think the hospitality bond was issued to have all that included. For some reason, you guys ran out of money. And that was before my time, it might have been before your time. Nevertheless, every time I go over there, people remind me of the same subject, They spent our money, what happened to my building? Well, and I brought it up, I don't know how many years ago. And do I still bring it up? Because I still hear it. But it does serve the whole city. It doesn't just serve the southeast part of the city. It does bring tennis players from all over the city. And I think some of it brings outside. That being said, 100% agree with you. The park system is what makes our city a jewel, or people bring for, people live in neighborhoods.
People make
because
choices where
of
they
the-
live
of-
because
of
of
the
the
park
record.
system. And then Ed needs it, I need it, Sam needs it, Daniel needs it. I mean, there is no perfect equation to this, but I feel like if we take one big lump sum of money somehow and get it over with, so we're not having this discussion every single year, might be the right solution. I mean, it's gonna take us 15 years to pay it off anyway, so, it's better just to get it off the table and bite the bullet 1 year and, be stringent about, or how we spend our money, and let's just fix it. So we don't hear about Sam complaining or Ed about,
In a
saying
perfect world, that
anything,
would
or
be
me
great,
like,
but as Ms.
not?
Wilson said,
But
that,
you're gonna
I
buy a
mean,
Rolls
but-
Royce, but you can't maintain it. I mean,
we
gotta
can't.
think
Well, not even
twice.
maintaining, I think what Ms. Wilson is saying, we've talked about that if we gave direction at our retreat regarding where we wanted to go to Finley. So, and she made it very clear, if we make that direction, what that does to our ability to do other things. So it'd be great if we had the ability to do a bond and do all these other parks, but we don't. So again, you gotta prioritize and figure out how are we gonna get all of these done and still keep it on the list.
Before we say
these
we
things.
don't have the capability, let's find out if if Jeff or anybody else will tell us whether we have the ability or not, but, nevertheless, I'll leave this alone. I think I've said my piece.
True
And I'll
wellness
let
is a
y'all.
perfect example.
All right, next.
Next, Randy?
Well,
We love you, Ray.
I've heard you loud and
We
clear,
clear.
and I can get some information back to you based on what was discussed around the table.
And I know when we do the budget, Ms. Wilson, you do always give us the full list, but it'd be good if every time we have this discussion, we have that full list.
I think
just
she's
so
done that too,
We can
but
all
we
be
keep changing it.
reminded. Yeah, we can all be reminded, because there's still projects, I think, I think people forget that we have that property in Belvedere that we had said we were due something. And, so we've got to keep those things
It's
on.
on
And here comes Robert
And
with another $5
and
million.
not only, and let me say this too, not only that, I go outside of our parameters to try and find money, okay? That's why I'm still asking you about other sources. And a number of these facilities, like Hyatt Parks, for some reason over the years, we haven't been putting the dollars in there. So now they've all come to the table.
Well, just to,
You want to continue?
this has been good.
It has been good. Yeah, it's good to get it out,
It's good to get it out, and we can still smile and be friends with each other. The thing that is very,
Sam, you still friends with the
I love anybody at the table.
yeah. I think it's critically important. I think one of the things we can't do is to separate our own individual interests in whatever facility there is. We're doing some work there with the park. And,
Y'all doing a great job with a little bit of
we're
money
doing,
you got.
doing a great job over there. And if there are any donations, please forward them our way. The other thing is, I want to say to all of our colleagues that it is extremely important that while there are issues within our park system that we need to pay close attention to, that each park represents, I think, two points. One is economic development, and the other, of course, is our particular, that this is the city's park, not ours.
Right.
It's the city's park. And I think in so emphasizing assessing, it provides us an opportunity to really get our nails or our coins in a row. There are places in our district that doesn't have a park, that was granted. That was simply said some years ago, that one particular area off of Two Notch Road, Belvedere area, was supposed to have a park. There has not been a whole lot of conversation, but I'm glad to hear us say that that's something we can put on the table to at least talk about it.
It's on our list.
Huh?
It's on our list.
Yeah, it's on our list. So it provides us an opportunity to have this kind of interaction with each other. but to realistically say, let's handle this thing in a way that it's not singularly an issue, but collaboratively an issue for our city. Let the ushers come forward and let's take up an offering.
Let me bring you a little.
That would be
That would be helpful, right? Let's do Thank you, Randy. All right.
an empty bowl next time,
We
Eric.
don't have money for.
Another wish list
Yes.
project,
Come on,
but
Robert.
we are
$5 million right here.
won't be able to. Let's just start off up front, Caleb, and say we won't be able to do everything on this list, but you all did ask for it, and we wanted to provide you the information, and it's very well done. So I want you to have the information so that when we are, as we're identifying funding, we can know the direction.
Must be good.
Orangeburg has a sign.
That
I
it was
sent
$1
you
million for
guys.
every gateway.
No, we have to recognize, we have lots of gateways as opposed to some other
Way
areas.
too many.
There's,
Um,
yeah, Robert.
but you
We
can
need to
phase
close
them
a
in.
few of them.
But then there's a
Toll road.
Thank you.
Pay for it. So, afternoon, everyone. My name is Caleb King. I'm the new superintendent of forestry and beautification. Glad that on a cold, rainy day in April, we can talk about flowers and some warm thoughts. So, hopefully, you guys will enjoy. I think what's important to look at when we look at this project is understanding where our gateways are at. And so, my goal is to kind of walk you through this packet that I've handed out and identify some of these gateways and then what some of these gateways could look like. So, as you can see, we've identified 18
First one.
gateways in the this area.
Dang.
See what I mean?
Dang.
Of these 18 gateways, we have some main interstates that are in these areas. We have some secondary and tertiary roads, and these are identified by my peers and myself as areas that are access to the city, where we're getting high traffic counts and geographically where they're located and just their importance throughout the city and their access to our city. So with that, we kind of pulled out a few of those and took a closer look, and there's some maps that you can reference in the back as well. But just going through some of those, I want to talk about the quadrants. So that's basically, I pulled out each quadrant to show a site plan that can be seen on each of those quadrants. Also, the quadrant is important because some of these interstates and these right-of-ways, some of them don't fall within, or half of it may fall within the city right-of-way or the city-owned area.
I'm sorry, Caleb.
Yes,
Before
go
you
ahead.
on, I just want to be clear, because where you have the quadrant, you have wildflowers and landscaping. No, at one time, we were talking about actual signage. This, what you're proposing doesn't include a sign. This is,
Not currently, but we're open to all things. I'm just simply providing some ideas.
This
as
is
to
the,
what-
this is their version of the Green New Deal.
The Green New Deal? I think what we were talking
I
about
thought
was
they
an
were the
actual
signs.
yeah, that was
Lexington
kind of,
brick and mortar.
Right.
yeah, that was kind of our discussion. I mean, I think
Let's see what it sounds
beautification
like.
is important too, but I
Can,
think that's kind of where a lot
And
of
I don't
Sure,
mind.
You
to-
showed us.
I don't mind to address the signs. There
Yeah.
were two versions of the sign. One of them came from Keep the Midlands Beautiful
Yeah.
and an organization they worked with, and the other one came from Lake Murray Tourism, I believe. The original sign for only the Keep the Midlands Beautiful at Harbison was like $1.3 or $4 million for one sign. With I think there's about 15 gateways. That would equate to quite a bit of money. So we've also been to
who designed that? Stuart Mungo?
we have the design firm, okay, I don't know who it was.
didn't get
But I think Caleb's presentation is directed more towards making things enhanced at the gateways and making sure that the yards are mowed when we do have visitors into town. And I think that's what he's here to present.
And I like the beautification. I think it'd be helpful as we go through your first one, kind of layout. So when you say installation costs of 2,000 to 200,000, what that includes, and so we have a conceptual idea of what that means.
For sure, and I'll walk you through that. As you just referenced, installation costs. So that's a one-time fee. That's to basically our install, and I'm going to go through all the things that are going to be listed in that. So that's your one-time fee, and then you have your annual cost, which is going to be basically year-round cost, or you're going to have every year that expense to do the maintenance of that specific landscape.
And I think, Ms. Wilson, I think too, as we move forward, we ought to be considering meeting with some of the corporate folks and finding
Absolutely, yes.
sponsors to
I
take
think
on some of
Robert
these.
And Caleb and Sarah probably have some thoughts on that. Yes, sir.
As for the other proposed gateways, we wanted to just break out the mowing and the mowing cost and debris pickup, weeding, and those types of things of what those would be as well, so you kind of see that on paper. And then also, I want to make sure that you guys are aware of that we do have 6 completed gateways. There's a landscape at 6 gateways. Our staff, the forestry and beautification staff, takes care of 5 of those 6. And we have a contract with the city of Irmo that takes care of the I-26 and Lake Murray Boulevard landscape.
So Blossom Street and William Street. When we say that complete, where are we on the maintenance of that? Because you ride that stretch over the bridge, especially when you get to our side of the river. I hate to use our side, but that's really what we're talking about. There always seems to be tall grass, trash, and things there as we come in that gateway. So when we look at these contracts, is that because it's a DOT road that it's not being consistently cut? You know, and I'm talking about like in the roadway, not because that's where the tall grass is growing, where the medians and all that. That's what looks so bad.
So anything that's completed, we will maintain. So generally, when you come across the Blossom Street Bridge, we take care of the palmetto trees and the floripedalums on the side up to that. When you're coming on a Fairfield or you're coming on Forest Drive, that's under a DOT contract. Their contract mows it 4 times a year is all it does. So everything that we've done completed, we actually put on our mowing schedule, and I believe we try to get it every 10 days to 14 days.
So, but if they're not hitting the median and the roadway and the sidewalks, that's where that tall grass is, the weeds are growing up. I mean, that's what you see during the summertime when you come across there, or even into the fall. And so to maintain the grass, and maybe it's just a contractual thing, guys, we need you to hit this and we need you to pick up the trash there, because that's what people see when they roll in.
And I'm pretty honest, and sometimes with reluctance, I believe the city manager put a program into place about 1.5 years ago that I think addresses some of those needs. So what we do is we have a gateway crew. Caleb has 2 crews right now using 2 full-time employees and temps. Instead of worrying about, and I hate to pick an area of town, North Main Street. Instead of worrying about going out North Main Street and one person mowing their yard 1 week and the other person mowing their yard 4 weeks later, we come through and we actually mow and edge everything on that road to make that sidewalk look presentable. You know, before the NCAA tournament, I know Caleb and his staff did Huger Street to make sure.
Well, we did that as an event, but the problem is Robert, it's not on. We don't have the ability to do that, and I think long term,
we are doing it on a rotating basis. If you've got an area that we're not doing, I'd love to see it. Okay.
I mean, I ride over it all the time. I notice it.
Which area, Mr. Davis?
Going over Blossom Street.
So, breaking down some of those
That'd be
installation
district
costs, just so you can see it on paper. So we're looking at plant material. It could be equipment or rental, tree and plant material removal. Some of these major interchanges could have trees, could have debris that's on them that's going to have to be removed before a landscape could be put in place, whether it be wildflowers or a landscape. Another big hurdle is water access and installation. So being able to get water to these specific locations, especially in a landscape, would be an issue. Irrigation parts and labor, excavation as part of the wildflower program. There would be some tilling and disking in the installation process for wildflowers. Also soil amendments, mulch, and just labor is kind of what you're looking at for your installation costs.
So how many plantings, so the initial planting would be year 1, and then after that would be the maintenance. How many would we have to go back? Are these all annuals? I mean, what?
So we would landscape it in a way that would have low maintenance, but there's no landscape that's not going to have any maintenance. So unfortunately, We have some power to be able to put stuff in there that's going to be low maintenance, but regardless, there's still going to be annual maintenance to keep it looking nice.
It's low maintenance when you plant them. Well, it's high when you plant them, but during the season, it requires very little, if no, mowing and all that, right?
Are wildflowers? Or are you talking about landscape?
Well, I mean, just
Either or.
Either or in general, the selection of the
The landscape will tend to be a little bit more high maintenance throughout the year, whereas wildflowers, you kind of install it and you let it do its thing, and you don't really have to touch it as much. And the mowing is less as well in wildflowers. And I'll get to some of the pros and cons of those two different types.
Just one question.
Yeah.
I know it doesn't happen, but since we, and some of these are connecting with the highway, with DOT properties, do they don't partner with us at all in sharing some of them?
Not this time.
No, they just keep that fuel surtax for something. I'm not quite sure what it's for, but.
I know Robert and I talked about that, but, you know, I don't, I just think there ought to be a way where they could participate in some of that.
And Councilman, we can have that conversation with DOT in the past. They are more than willing to sign their areas over to us to mow every 10 to 14 days, and keep their money for their 4 times.
So in the annual maintenance, just to break it down a little bit more, it's kind of a schedule that our crews currently follow, and there's 2 different regimes that we'd ask a contractor to do, and there's a summer mowing schedule. So we'd ask them to be out on those interchanges or those gateways 3 times a month, and they'd be mowing, picking up debris, edging beds, and weeding. And then in the wintertime, they would scale back a little bit as grass isn't growing as much, but they'd be expected to be out there at least once a year doing the same task. Other maintenance that can occur, or we'll have a seasonal time to it as far as maintenance could be weeding and herbiciding, irrigation maintenance, so fixing drip, fixing sprinkler heads. Those are things that are just going to be ongoing maintenance. Replanting or remulching, so a lot of times these landscape beds are going to need to be refreshed over time. That could be on a 2 or 3 year cycle, and unfortunately plants do die out. So just the maintenance of continuing to keep that looking well. Also, tree trimming and shrub pruning and debris removal. I know it sounds simple, but like as you see in the picture down below, when you have 50 to 100 loropetalum and you go to prune that back, it's a lot of debris and a lot of work and a lot of maintenance to keep that looking the way it does, unfortunately. So that's something to take into consideration.
Could I ask you a question on the plantings?
Yeah.
Just looking at it, I mean, obviously you're adding a lot of color in the hybrid stuff. I mean, is there any value to planting grasses and other things that create, substance and beauty that are even lower maintenance? Is that?
It is.
I just didn't see anything in here.
There
like
is.
that.
The only thing with grass, though, is you're still going to have it brown out, and there's still going to be pretty heavy maintenance as far as cutting that seasonally.
back.
Yeah. There are some grasses that you don't have to do that as much, but on the interstate, you're going to need grasses that are large anyways to have that impact, and so they're going to mostly be grasses that are going to have to be cut back at some point, and so there's maintenance with that as well.
What, I'm not changing your design, I'm just thinking, when USC redid the football stadium, they had the palm trees and it looked like low maintenance, shrubberies and stuff. Is that something, did y'all look at that, Sarah? And are you familiar with?
That's not in our landscape ordinance. You can't use palm trees.
Let's change the ordinance then.
We're open to all options, and like I said, I'd like just to look through the maps, and these are just ideas and possibilities of what some of these interchanges could look like. But the plant material and all that, it has to go through the permitting process, and we're going to make it work for us as well. So.
Well, can I add, since you're open to all things, and my idea might actually add to the cost, but, of course, again, we all kind of wanted the signs, and I think that it still needs to, like we just talked about, the parks needs to stay on our list, because eventually I think we need to get there. But what about, you remember, that might have been Orangeburg too. Remember, like, someplace had the big smiley face and.
Oh, no, we're not doing that.
Not the smiley face, but I'm like, I wonder if could we do our skyline? The Columbia skyline. Like,
Yeah, but it changes all the time.
Well, why can't you just have something?
do the one that's on behind our,
I
when
think
the
we
Columbia.
should find us a natural stone or a rock and do the logo on it.
But that's what I'm saying, kind of the logo. that little thing and maybe do that. And I'm wondering if you could do that.
I know y'all all play interior and exterior designers on television, but leave it up to the experts.
Wait a minute. What interior design?
I'm just saying something that's specific to Columbia. So if we're not gonna have signs say "Welcome to Columbia," just something that kind of says Columbia.
And I don't think we're talking about every interchange, but coming in on 126 where that rock formation or whatever's there, where the road splits.
Leadership Columbia did that.
Yeah, having something nice there that, welcomes people, that looks good, I think is what you're not talking about every gateway. You're talking about having it in certain places so it becomes inviting and that we can plant. Because the one, I don't know which, the I-26 and Harbison Road layout that you did, I think I like the mix of what it is because it's got, the palmettos, it's got hollies, it's got junipers, it's got all kinds of crepe myrtles. It's gorgeous. And having that, and I know you plant things because of where the sun and all that is, but having that kind of grouping as inviting coming into the city, I think is.
Yeah, and that's what we're going for with some of these different options.
I think it's great.
To explore another option, we have wildflowers. I know that's been mentioned as something that we wanted to look into. And in doing that, I reached out to the head of the wildflower in North Carolina, the head of the North Carolina Department of Transportation is who it is, and he's a roadside engineer. And I spoke with him and just wanted to hear some of the benefits and some of the downfalls and some of the stuff that makes executing a wildflower plan tough. It was a good talk with him, and it allowed me to figure out where we could possibly utilize some of those things. So some of the pros of that, lower installation costs, so seed's pretty cheap, no irrigation's needed, less grass to mow, pollinator friendly for insects and bees, and then also provides a place for birds and habitat for them. Also a more natural look that some people prefer, and then we can also get a larger coverage area with a wildflower look. The cons of that, though, are it's going to be an annual installation. There's going to be minimal winter curb appeal. The floristic display is somewhat weather dependent, so we have a drought or it's really rainy, then that could affect what the outcome could look like. Also, we'll require some seasonal herbiciding to keep the weeds down and give me some good tips on how to execute something like that properly.
North Carolina does a great job using wildflowers and daylilies.
Yes, I was.
They're all over the place.
I was very impressed with. He was able to send me some literature, and they're doing it very well. So.
I didn't know you left the county.
Don't get away as much as I used to, but in my youth, I used to drive up to North Carolina.
That was only last week, right?
So in that. Oh, sorry. In that conversation, they kind of honed in on three specific flowers. Crops that they could use. Mainly these three were chosen due to high germination rate. Doesn't take much seed and soil contact to make those grow. They also they grow rapidly and they're kind of suited for this area. So those are cosmos, zinnias, and hybrid sunflowers. And it's preferred in executing one of these plans that you don't intermix them, but it'd be a monoculture of that. Just so it's easier maintenance, and you can do selective herbicide spraying to be able to get the desired look. Landscape gateways. So this is what we have in some of our current locations. The pros of that: you have a one-time installation fee. You have year-round curb appeal. Variety of plants and material can be used based on how the landscape designer designs that, and then the uniform look and design, what some people prefer, just kind of a neater look to it. Some of the cons, irrigation. So in some of these locations, getting water to these landscapes could be very tough. That could be boring under interstates or just tying in from other locations that could present some issues. Less coverage of the interchange. Weeds and debris will stand out in an environment like this because you're going to have mulch and you might have something in there. And it's just, I feel like visually you can see it a little bit more. And also a higher annual maintenance, whether that be pruning, or trimming up trees, and then also you also have more grass to mow. So there's edging, there's grass to mow as well.
The interchange at the zoo that we put in several years back.
Yes.
That would be one of these types.
Yes.
It's a little
Yep.
bit higher maintenance.
Yes, for sure.
Looks pretty good.
It does. Yes.
side of the street.
So I think in the plans there is a drawing in your packet of the north side of the Greystone. So with all that being said, I just wanted to allow you guys to look at see what some of these interchanges could look like, and also remember that DOT would be involved in the permitting process and also would have to approve all these plans and designs. We've worked with them before and kind of know their specs and what they're looking for, but yet we would need to present those to them as we hone in on what kind of places we'd like to look at for the future.
What's the time frame for you to do, if all of them? Is it within a year, 2 year, or can you do half this year, half another year?
It'd be securing contracts, figuring out who can do the work, since it's kind of something we haven't done before, especially the wildflower side of things. But I think we have, with Blanchard and some of these other places, we have some ideas as to who could execute that. Other than that, it'd be just a matter of getting it out to see the bidding process and what would happen with that. So I'm not sure.
Timeframe.
I don't.
So if we could find sponsors for some of these, that would reduce.
Well, I think you really want to get the sponsors for the annual maintenance.
And sign.
I mean, that's where you really want, because you're going to be tough to get a sponsor to pick up all of the initial installation. But the maintenance is something that's cheaper.
It's $180 plus $25,000 a year. The zoo ought to be able to handle that intersection.
Yeah, they'll, and I can tell you exactly what to tell you.
Budget to us.
Councilman Duvall, we'd be glad to do it. Just up our hospitality money by $125,000. They get right off our tax bill. They'll just ask for more money on your tax bill.
Councilman Badura, I think to answer your question, we could probably do 2 or 3 a year. The reason we brought a hybrid system in is to make sure that, if we wanted to tackle one this year and do a couple wildflower locations, a couple of years from now, those wildflower locations can convert to something else as funding becomes available.
Right.
And I think if it was, my thoughts is, tackle, 2 or 3 different locations and give them a year or two, see how it works. And then, maybe attack the rest of it rather than, invest in, I don't know, it looks like 18 places or 18 different locations or so. I think that would be my ideal thinking.
And I think that 6 at the top of the list are those 6 that staff has identified or recommends to, depending on, how we would deal with funding, get started with. Not to open up a discussion of which 6 and where, but that would be the.
District 1 again.
That would be the.
How did you miss that one?
I didn't miss it. I noticed it when I turned the page open, the first one. I was like, here we go again.
And Mayor Benjamin, I hate he's not here, we'll make sure he gets his copy, had asked for this presentation, and also shared, I think, a project from Hammond, Mr. Recommended. Did y'all look at that or see the, okay, I have it.
But,
It was on some renewable lighting that he thought would.
I did see that, sorry.
You did see that, okay. That would, work as part of the enhancements in the gateways.
but Robert, what about the signage? Because the initial conversations we had were about signage coming in, similar to what we see on the highways. And I've seen some of them in towns smaller than Columbia, and somehow they managed to make it happen. Can we, for budget purposes, talk to some of the corporate partners in the area?
So we have
Help
done.
us sponsor some.
We have done some research. It's been a couple of years, and we can update those numbers. The Rock Hill sign was $1 million. The sign that was designed for Columbia was like 1.3, 1.4. The sign that goes into Lexington off of 378, I believe, is over 600,000. I think as Columbia looks, where, and I think it would be a reverse question almost back to the council, is we can make a recommendation where the sign goes.
Right.
But I think council holds that key of where does the sign go? Do you want it at I-77 and Bluff Road, or do you want it on Main Street, or do you want it on 77 at 277, or do you want it at Harbison and 126, or Greystone and 126? We don't know where that sign would go.
Follow the traffic pattern.
And if you add more than one, you're just doubling your cost every time you do it. So we don't mind to update our cost, and we think that we're probably close on where we would be at with something that is a design like Keep the Midlands Beautiful design. If you
So the
could
one on
An
378 is
example.
LDOT money, grants.
have been TAP grants, I'm not sure.
One example of our thought at the time is that, for example, only for the sake of discussion, if we looked at North Main and I-20, that was one of the ones you had. We thought maybe Pepsi would help because it's right there at their doorstep, for example.
We also believe that Blanchard could be a very big partner because of their location on Buckner
Road.
and what they do on the interstate frontage. You know, somewhere down the road, it would be nice to tie two intersections there together. There's a new soccer complex over there that's bringing in thousands of people also at Monticello.
I think we just need to keep thinking through how to accomplish that. And it might be, one sign sponsored or grant, and then eventually we can do more. And I think this is a good start.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions on this?
Excellent job.
So put it on the list. Thank you very much.
Look on something.
We need to talk about the priorities, though.
Flowers. Let me see.
It's heavily weighted again.
All right, is there a motion, Mr. Duval?
I'm gonna change my district to District 1.
I had nothing to do with that.
I think,
Madam Mayor Pro Tem, I'd like to move to go into executive session for receipt of legal advice related to matters covered by attorney-client privilege pursuant to 34-70A2, ban the box ordinance, revenue options, Green Street Penny Project, bike lanes, Penny Projects, Lower Richland Sewer, Rocky Branch Greenway. Discussion of matters related to proposed location or expansion of services to encourage location or expansion of industries or other businesses pursuant to 70A2 Klein. Discussion of negotiations instant proposed contractual arrangement pursuant to 70A2 wayfinding MOU. Discussion of employment of an employee pursuant to 70A2 ECDC. Discussion of matters related to proposed location or expansion of services to encourage location or expansion of industries or other business pursuant to 70A2 Affordable Housing Initiative.
is there a second?
Second.
It's been probably moved to second. If the clerk will read the roll.
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
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 We're gonna.